Hello and welcome back to the tavern. We are here with a very special guest tonight. C4 Labs is not only coming out here to chat with us about some different role playing games and things like that, they're also our sponsor for the entire month of February. And by that, I mean these amazing dice trays that we've got now are all because of them. And they're really nice because they're, solid wood instead of, plastic. But I wanted to show that off before and then I'll bring that up back up here in a little bit. But I have Ivan here, who is part of their team, and he's excited to be here, I hope. Uh, and just before, if anybody's new to the channel, this is a very relaxed and chill stream. Really, we're gonna sit back, we're gonna talk. I'm gonna have my nightly beer because though I am 6 foot and like 210 pounds, um, I am a dwarf at heart, and this is one thing that I love is my beer. So also, I guess German and Irish doesn't really help me on that whole not wanting beer thing, but it's definitely a plus in my opinion. So I asked Ivan, I said, "Hey, what would be something interesting to talk about?" And he said, how do we come up with things that we can implement into our games outside of D&D?" So he's got to think a list a few different RPGs, and we're going to talk about those and what we think might be able to be added to maybe your D&D experience. But before we start, I'm going to do what I always do in the tavern, and that is I'm going to ask you three simple questions. One, how long have you been playing D&D? Two, what made you start playing D&D? And three, did you ever pick up the mantle of Dungeon Master? So, okay. I mean, if it's the 90s, I mean, 10, 15 years probably at this point. So, off and on. No audio for Ivan. Oh, no. Let's see what's going on here. How about now, guys? I told you this was going to happen if I
Yeah.
messed up. Yep, there he is. I see him now.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. No, I've got two speakers on my microphone for some reason, and it's flipping them when I'm on stream, and I don't know why. Uh,
Yeah. I think you underestimate how long ago the '90s were.
I mean, goodness, yeah, you're right. Because I have been playing since the 90s too, so that's always like, oh, no, you're right. Yeah, no, 20 some plus years.
Yeah.
Golly, I'm feeling old tonight. It's fine. I'm good with it. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Um, yeah, my brother, he had some old second edition books,
Okay.
and I think he moved out or something and he gave them to me. I don't even remember how I inherited them, but I did. And yeah, I played a bit really poorly, but um
I mean, I think
yeah,
that's
I've
kind of how
I've
you
been
start. You start playing really bad, like
oh yeah.
really bad
I
D and
mean,
D.
I
You
was
don't you don't really understand anything you're doing, unless you get the luxury of somebody who's been playing for a very long time, kind of walking you through it. Otherwise, you're picking up a book and going, "Okay, I think I understand what's supposed to happen. Let's find out. Let's grab some dice and see where this thing goes."
yeah, also I think I was like 9 or something at the time.
Oh yeah,
Trying to decipher that old second edition book. It was funny because some of the things were just sort of assumed to like oh, you know what this is, like character sheets, for example.
right.
I was talking about um making your character. It says write this. It's like, well, write it where? And I was very
I
confused as
swear
like this
that is
9-year-old kid going through this
kind of
book.
something that happens a lot though for many different um, games because of that same thing, right? We're seeing all of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay, but we read it completely like literal when you're reading as a child, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Where's I don't? What do I do?"
Yeah, it took me far too long to figure out, oh, there's a character sheet in the back that I'm supposed to photocopy and not just write in the page
Right?
and ruin it forever. Um, and yeah, what was the third question?
So the third question is, have you ever picked up the mantle of dungeon master?
Oh, yes. I have. I tend to be sort of the
The forever
forever.
GM, eh?
Yes.
Yes, I feel
Um,
that pain. Running, 3 games a week sometimes. It's a struggle at points, but really it's something I've fallen in love with now to this point where I'm just like I love getting to dive into a single character and play as a player every once in a while, but it's like I
yeah.
get that itch out of my way and then it's back to, running 12,000 NPCs and hurting your brain because you're trying not to mix them all up.
Yeah. Or like you forget one tiny detail and your players are like, wait,
Wait,
what
but
was
that's the
that? They're like, oh, did I not tell you guys that?
Yeah, or the better one is you're like, yeah, so this guy who did this, you're like, no, he didn't. I was like, what do you mean he didn't? And they're like, oh no, 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 back yet like 3 episodes, like 3 sessions ago, you told me the player was this, and I was like, dang it, back to the notes. Yep, you're
Oh
right.
man.
All right, move on.
Yeah, one time I was running a one shot and it started out with this character uh on his deathbed, and then he dies, and then the players go have their adventure and everything, and then um someone comes in and talks about the inheritance, and they're like, well, he's not dead. Like, what do you mean he's not dead? He died at the beginning. They're like, did he? Like, no, he didn't. Oh, oops, that was kind of very important that he died.
No, no, no. He was supposed to die. This is part of the whole thing. It needs to happen. You're like, okay, fine. I'll
And I
kill my
sort of
player. Just
forgot
let him
to, give them the whole, oh, by the way, he's dead now.
He's dead now. You're like,
They're
oh,
doing this whole adventure, not even knowing that the
oh
guy's
my
dead.
goodness. That's funny, but it's very common in a lot of cases where that happens. Um, my
Just little
biggest
details.
brain fart, right? No, I completely agree. How's it going, guys? Um, so yeah, it's so funny when you get to those points and you're like, oh no, what do I do? Like, and you kind of freeze for a second. And I've had a lot of times where my friends will look at me and they're like, it's okay. It's even in some of the games that I'm a professional game master, the same thing happens. They're like, we get it. Everybody's human. This
Hmm.
is what happened or this is what didn't happen, and we'll move on. Uh, and I've really found those types of players to be just a lot of fun to play with.
Oh
It's
yeah.
the ones that are dead set 100%. These things have to happen in the game or it's not fun. And I'm just like, maybe you're not the type of players I want to be running with. I had a
No, definitely.
character and it's one of the earlier paid games that I ran. Um, he was a warforged
Mhm.
and he died on this hill that he was not allowed to go to sleep. That's what they do. They go into their sentry mode and they don't
Yeah.
actually fall asleep. Well, I like to thematics my. That's a word, right? I think so. If not, we're at the tavern. It'll be okay. I promise. But no, so I like to
Thematicise.
give some sort of theatrics when I'm playing and leveling characters up. And he was a paladin, and he was a paladin of vengeance, and his deity was coming to speak to him for the first time to give him his vengeful nature, or like what his vengeance would be with. And we had already figured out what it was and his backstory and all that. But I told him this was the one, like, you wake up, and for the entire like 3 sessions after it, he kept getting on me of no, my Warforged doesn't fall asleep. And at the end of the 3 sessions, I looked at him. I said, "Listen, I'm not trying to be a jerk. There's nothing that actually affected your character in this." I said, "But you have to think, a divine creation came and spoke to you and shut you down. There is no like this is a different world we're living in here. The divine creator of your domain has came and spoken to you, and you were shut down for 45 minutes. Like, this is nothing really that's going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form. It's not like you
Mhm.
woke up and were surrounded by goblins. Nothing. It's you were in an inn. You had just completed a mission. This happened. It was supposed to be very theatrical, and then move on. And he died literally on that moment. He was like, "Nope, I don't want to play this character anymore because it's not supposed to go to sleep." And I was like, "Hmm,
Such a minor detail.
such a
You
exactly."
could have called it anything else, you
I
know.
was like, there were so many more things you could have argued about, like, and I would have been
Mhm.
perfectly okay with the argument, but this one was just beyond me. And we went our ways, and I picked up a different group, and this group's been going now for almost 2 years, and uh, I love playing with each and every one of them. And but yeah, no, I was just really, really lost at that moment of like, this is what we're going to die on tonight, huh? And
I had a similar problem with my last group, and that's also why I'm not playing with that group anymore. We were playing
sometimes people
through.
just don't. You just got to find the group that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I love these people. It's just I don't want to play D&D with them anymore. We were playing through Curse of Strahd, and uh, there's a character who's basically like Strahd's butler,
Yeah.
and he's like giving the PCs a tour of the castle,
Okay.
and two of the players were just like, "Why is this like this? Why is this like this? Why is this like this?" And the answer was always, "It's
because
magic.
because
It's
Strahd wanted it that way. This is what we do. When you
it's
understand
like,
who Strahd is, you just accept the fact that if Strahd wants it away, this is how he'll have it.
yeah, but it was things like, oh, where's this beam of light coming from in the ceiling? It's like it's moonlight. I
It's
don't know. And they're
moonlight,
like,
yeah,
well, it shouldn't be. It's like it's magic. It's
right?
fucking magic.
Yeah, no,
Like
I
none of this
completely
matters.
agree.
And they're asking me all sorts of weird questions. So like one of the things that players can find very early on in Curse of Strahd is the the ghosts of previous adventurers
Yes.
will they'll they'll pop out of the graveyard and they'll walk all the way to Strahd's castle. They'll go all the way up this tower and then they'll jump down this pit and vanish. And they do this every single night at midnight. And they were asking so many questions about it, just like, "Oh, who are these people?" Like, "Oh, the previous adventurers." Like, "Well, why did this happen?" It's like, "Well, it's the
They're
curse of the
stuck in
land."
this, this they're stuck in this temporal loop where this is what they reenact every night.
Yeah, and they asked me so many questions, and I kept just saying, "It's the curse of the land. It's the curse of the land. It's the curse of the land." I mean, that's literally what the explanation is. The
yeah.
land is cursed. That's
Oh
that's
yeah,
the
no,
whole
I
that's the whole
yeah.
point of Ravenloft. And I'm just I was just pulling my hair out. And they thought, it's like, why is this character being so shady? Why isn't he telling us anything? I'm like, he's the most forthcoming person you've met this entire campaign so far. You're just asking him the dumbest questions. Like it's just a curse.
Yeah.
There's
We
nothing
all
more.
know the curse is here. We all know this is the problem.
Yeah, it's
And
called
you're
the Curse
asking
of
like
Strahd.
why these weird things happen, but you've seen people get up out of the ground, you've seen zombies
Yeah,
walking around, you know, depending on how far in you've been, I mean, you're seeing some weird stuff, and yet you're going to complain that the ghosts are going to jump off a cliff and die and then return the
yeah.
next morning and do it again.
Like, explain to me how you're throwing fireballs. Like this doesn't make any sense either.
All right, yeah, okay, wizard, you show me. You tell me, how did you do that?
Show me the math.
They need to be bonked on their head with a skillet. Well,
One of them
ah,
did.
I mean, yeah, people overcomplicate. I completely agree. People overcomplicate things.
Yes.
Um, and it's funny because a lot of the ones that I've had overcomplicate things were either really, it was like one of my lowest paid games I've ever ran, or it was my actual friends. The people that
Hmm.
have run games now for that actually pay me to run games, which I never thought was a thing until like 2 years ago. And it's now a very cool thing for me, which I love. But besides the point, um, they're one of my favorite games to play half the time. I'm like, wow, you guys, like, you come, you're invested, you're excited, you want to bring game to life, and I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted in real players.
Yeah.
The mimic chair, that's just mean.
Yeah,
Sca-
sometimes
Scaring
games
people
falling
out of just
apart
the random
is
things is horrible, but it's so much fun. The
sometimes
random
games falling
chair.
apart is the best that can happen. Like one time I tried to do this one shot. It went so poorly. It was this one shot murder mystery where players were trying to figure out uh who did it.
Okay.
And there were all these secrets that everyone had, and everyone's trying to find out what everyone's secrets were, and it fell apart so much. Like no one solved any of the puzzles. Like no one was able to figure out anyone's secrets. Like it was, but we had so much fun because everyone was just bickering and pointing fingers at each other, and the wrong person got arrested at the end, and it was great, despite the fact that all the mechanics that I tried to throw in just got just
Yeah,
it
and
it
sometimes
was a
the dice are
mess.
just not fun either, right? Like that's one thing
Mhm.
I've realized, and I try not to. I try to when I tell people when I'm playing, I tell people when we're streaming that the dice are going to do what the dice do, and sometimes that makes for some extreme comedy in my games because we had this super, even on my stream, right? We had this super dark moment where these assassins were going to go steal these people for this evil organization, and the assassins were like these are trained assassins snuck into the hospital or stealing people out of the hospital, and my players are just like miss, miss. I'm
Mhm.
like, come on, guys, there's got to be something. Hey, thanks for the follow. Um, but yeah, no, I was just so frustrated, and then now they make, but the joke now stays throughout the campaign of like, oh, were these guys trained by the assassins? And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, thanks, guys. This is what I want to hear. What about mimic books on the mimic bookcase? You know, I have a thought, and I think if this ever gets to the point where I have enough time in my life outside of streaming and outside of DMing that I can write another adventure. I want to write an adventure of nothing but potential mimics. The house of mimicry or whatever craziness we're gonna do or mansion of mimics. Uh,
I like
and
that mention of mimics.
the idea would be is that you would roll the DM every time somebody interacts with something that would be potentially built in the mimics book in the back or the mimics library in the back would if you rolled a on a d6, if you automatically rolled if you rolled a one, the thing would automatically come alive, no matter what it is. Uh, I've seen that. I've also seen a mimic boat. That thing was frightening.
I think back in second edition, I want to say, maybe third edition, in the monster manual where they were talking about mimics, uh, they were saying that um, mimics they have like this psychic energy around them, and if you get enough mimics together, you can end up with like this mimic hive mind, and you can end up with like a whole mimic city almost.
Yeah. So actually, that's funny because that's kind of like the similarity of what if you've ever watched Critical Role, the end
Hmm.
of season two kind of had that with Cognosa. It was an entire living city.
Yeah,
Everything moved, everything had eyes, everything had teeth. I was like, this is a giant city of Mimic. This is a
yeah.
giant city of Mimic. But it was, but yeah, no, I think it'd be kind of funny that, everything you pick up, yeah, the book, okay, this is a good book. This is a good book. Oh, this book bit me in the arm. You sit down at the food table and, the chicken's good, the bread's good, but the knife is coming alive and stabbing you, just random things. And the idea would be is that it would all be on a random generator table so that anything could become a mimic because the mimic would be able to it would be stuck at pretty much what you were saying where there'd be 40 or so mimics within the house that could randomly take shape to whatever's in the building, and it'd kind of be how that would play out. um, Sounds frightening in my personal opinion. I think I'll have to write this in the sometime in the long future. But
Speaking of
yeah,
mimics, I do have something to share.
sure.
We've got a sneak peek of something that we've been working on.
Ooh,
It's a
that's a
mimic
mimic
dice.
tray.
Yeah. So I know it's not really showing up very well with
I see the teeth. I
the
see the
janky.
teeth. I see the giant eye in the middle. Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that thing's
So this
dope.
is,
That thing
full
is
color
super
print,
cool.
and this is 3D printed,
Yeah, 3D printed
and
teeth, and if you get really, if you're a good painter, you take a little bit of a dark wash
oh,
on
like
those and
that.
make them all. There you go. Look at that.
I painted this one, um,
That
and
thing's
yeah.
crazy.
So this is something that we're hoping to release soon.
Yeah.
uh,
I might have to get the customized teeth for my customized tray.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, we'll have to send you some. The
Add teeth to my tray.
there's a lot of debate at work over whether or not we're actually going to sell pre-painted ones. I can't imagine that being cheap
Yeah,
because
no, no.
our artist's time he's not
Artist
cheap.
time is so much money. Like I get
Yeah.
it.
But yeah, the the owner of the company, he really wants it to happen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Even
Yeah,
if
so
I have
that's
to like meet you guys at a con just so I can swipe teeth from to add to my tray, like I'll figure a way. So, but yeah, no, that's yeah, man. I almost feel like after the whole talk about mimics, we should have made our monster of the week a mimic.
oh yeah. You didn't bring up Monster of the Week.
We are gonna bring it monster of the week.
Oh, you at the beginning of the show, aren't you supposed to like be like, "Hey, people, guess what this is?"
Yeah, no, we do it at 9:30. So at 9:30, we're gonna. So guys, if you're in the chat room and you haven't already guessed on Instagram or any of the other social medias, if you want to guess what the monster is with a little question mark inside him, this one's pretty. People are nailing this one pretty easily. So, but there, it took me a while to really understand the viciousness of what these creatures are.
They're
Like,
fun.
I
They're
started playing with them, and then I really sat down and I read over the stats and the understanding. Like, what they can do is terrifying. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'll throw four goblins at full capacity thought process at one of my parties, which is a four-player party, and I was like, I've got to slim these guys down. Like their stats are wicked evil. Um, and we're gonna go over that. So yeah, so if you guys don't know what we're talking about, and it's already been mentioned in the show, but our monster of the week is the goblin. So let me slide him over there. So yeah, the goblin's right there. He's a little, one-fourth challenge creature. But what I want to talk about is I never realized the danger of what Nimble Escape did.
oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. Playing with Nimble Escape at its max is scary.
Yeah.
Get a horde together. Yeah, no, you throw six of these things. You make sure they all dive into tree limb or like bushes and stuff like that with nimble escape to hide, and then pop out with their advantaged shots, and then next turn do the exact same thing. And
Yeah, that's the fun thing I like about them is that they're they're just so like they're kind of weak, but they're just so vicious and
yeah,
annoying. Like they'll just keep coming at you, and like even a higher player level, sorry, character level,
yeah,
they can still be a bit of a challenge.
oh yeah,
You can beef one or two of them up, make a goblin chieftain, and there's a lot of other stuff that come with them too. Like what are the wolves called? The wargs?
yeah. Wargs the wolves.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like
there's
they
a
can
bunch
come
of
running in on those
those.
guys, but there's so many fun situations they can do. In previous editions, they had a lot of
Lot of flavor.
yes, back when they were little and green instead of big and
Yeah, like
they were
not as big and green. Yeah, now they're like some tan color.
Yeah, kind of hobgoblin-y.
Yeah,
But
more so.
I really like the idea of they're like clever little inventions and traps, and like trying to go into a goblin den, just
Yeah.
imagining all sorts of fun, crazy things you can do. So like um one time I played something where there were pressure plates,
Ooh.
and it they wouldn't activate from a goblin's weight because goblins are very tiny.
Right,
But
but you get the plate wearer walking through.
yeah, but like any human would be heavy enough
Yeah.
to press the pressure plate down. So one goblin can lure the party through and just run full speed.
Yeah.
And then when the PCs come and chase them, they get hit with whatever fun stuff. And
Oh yeah, no, two logs slide, do the Ewok thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then they can do things like they can have slits in the walls where they're like blowing blow darts and
Yep.
stuff, and you can't really do much through that. It's
Yeah.
just
No,
like
I,
there's
I
just
completely agree. Do I think goblins are the most wicked things? Like some of these little creatures that people are like, oh, they're 1/4 rating, 1/8 rating, so you can throw a million of these things and your player shouldn't die. Then you really start reading through them and you're like, no, these guys are wicked. Like they're
yeah,
nasty.
and there's
Uh,
a lot of fun scenarios that
I also like to throw the fact I tell my players all the time is like, I was like one thing I love to give my enemies is class levels, but like goblins and stuff, I'll give them like level one of a class. Like I'm not giving them anything crazy, but when you've got the one goblin that kind of sits there in the back, he's got this nice little cloak over his head, and he's laughing really maniacally, and then you find out that he has sneak attack. Oof.
oh yeah. um and yeah, in fifth edition they have uh the player character race of goblin.
Yeah,
They have some interesting stuff on them. So the default one, I believe, is where they get a damage bonus against any creature bigger than them.
bigger than yeah, fury of the
And
small.
being goblins, that's most things you fight.
Right.
So anything bigger than a halfling.
Yeah. So you guys have any questions with our audience tonight about the goblin or about anything we went over tonight so far? Because if not, we're going to dive into the next portion of our our talk, which is going to be some different RPGs that are not D&D and how you can maybe use some of these tricks and different types of scenarios for your D&D campaign to kind of spice things up a little bit. Uh,
Come on, my dog wants to say hi.
Favorite goblin NPCs. I always love the Goblin Artificer NPC. I don't know why. I've always just play one randomly, but I like the fact that I always make him break things. Like I don't know what it is. He never is fully that good at it. He's always they want to make something crazy, and then all of a sudden the thing fires off in the back and blows up, and you're like, oops, runs off and goes and tries to figure out how to fix the problem, that kind of
And
thing.
that fits really well with the goblin's whole flavor of just being uh
Chaotic.
tinkerers in general, but just
Yeah,
not very
chaotic
smart.
tinkerers, but I think that's another fun thing about goblins, though, is that they're a lot of times when I've read their stuff, it's like you can build traps and stuff, but they don't have to be traps that are actually working. They can be
Yeah.
like half traps. They covered up half of the half of the hole because they're not smart enough to cover the whole hole. That kind of thing, and you start running past them, and you realize that it's like a false trap for the actual trap that's going to fall and drop on you at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Also, if people really want to use a lot of traps, but not make them, honestly, if you made a dungeon of just pure traps, you can just wipe out pretty much
oh yeah,
any party. But you can just make them really really weak. Like there's a pit trap, but it only goes down a foot, so like
right, yeah, because
does like
goblins aren't
one
going to sit there and
damage.
dig, you know, 30 feet because they ain't getting out first off.
Yeah.
Or you throw the 30-foot goblin, or you throw them in the 30-foot pit, and then you realize at the bottom of them there's a dead goblin because, well, he was the one that shoveled the whole thing out and realized he couldn't get out.
See, a goblin skeleton with a shovel. Just
Right? You know?
yeah, I think if you throw in a whole lot of really weak traps,
Yeah.
it's enough to be annoying to the players, but not enough to really harm them that much. Like
Right.
stepping in a pit trap, taking one damage. It's just kind of like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
on. Like I fell for it again. It's like
You
hit
fell for it again. But yeah, I completely agree. I think that's kind of what the goblins should be built with. And I think
yeah.
that's a lot with a lot of those types of creatures like goblins, kobolds. Um, I like to play that way with grung. You know,
Hmm.
little frog people in the jungle.
Yeah.
They might have a vine trap. You know, it makes you trip and you lose your. You know,
Oh, are those guys with the poison skin?
they are the ones with the poison skin. Yes.
Oh man, you got to make all of them grapplers. They just grapple constantly.
Yeah. So I mixed one because I'm insane. I mixed them with a Kuatoa once, and that
Mhm.
was a nasty creature because they have the sticky shields. So
Mhm.
you just stick to them, and then you know they're salad or they're just excreting poison. So you're like, ooh, but it was fun.
But yeah, those guys they're a similar sort of flavor where like I mean they can be where just they're small, there's a lot of them and they're just really annoying. Like they'll climb a tree, they'll
Yeah.
jump down on you and they'll grab you and you're poisoned.
Yep.
I
Thank
I
you.
know a lot of people don't necessarily um get to higher levels, but for those who do play higher levels, like 15 and up, I think you can definitely throw in some goblins and maybe beef up their stats a little bit,
Hmm.
or kobolds or anything that fits in that sort of fun niche of the agile, annoying, trap laying,
Yeah.
sneaky guys.
I will
I
say
I
though,
always have a lot of fun with them.
um, something I read online and then kind of started to implement in some of my games is I love to throw goblins at larger parties, but make them hordes.
Hmm.
And I think it makes it really, you get that feel of like the Lord of the Rings goblin
Oh yeah.
slaying, just badass at that point. Where when you're killing, you're describing the fact you're not killing one, you know, you're carving through five at a time, but then they're diving on top of you at the same time. And I don't know. My players really ate up the theatrics for that because they're like they felt that epic hero moments that you see when they're tearing through 6,000 orcs in a couple minutes on a TV show. So
Yeah.
and I love to do the same thing with big monsters. You know, you've got when you right before the party sees a monster and it just rips through you know 1,000 orcs all at once as this dragon just burns everything in its path. It's just one of those things where it really ups the tension level very quickly when you're like, oh, this is what that monster can do. You're like, oh yeah,
It's gonna hurt a little bit.
it's gonna hurt. You weren't supposed to fight it yet. Maybe you need to run. You know those types of moments when you're trying to get your party not to fight everything under the sun.
Oh, you'll always have those players that
Yeah. Oh, you will.
like, well,
Like,
he wouldn't put it in front of us if he didn't think we could kill it.
yeah. You don't know me very well. My party knows. I've only killed three people in 2 years, so I'm doing my percentage isn't too bad. I outright one killed somebody. I felt really bad. The dice were just not being friendly at all. Um, it was a party of six. They were going up again. They were level eights, and they were going up against a level 11 or a CR11 Bone Devil. Six
Mhm.
players. It shouldn't have been too hard. Our player were having some issues with it because of some environmental things they were dealing with at the same time. And our divine sorcerer decided she was going to run up point blank, inflict wounds, full capacity, rolled a crit on it, took 1/3 of its health immediately away, and the sucker turned right around and rolled the same exact crit with that stinger on the back of its butt and insta kill because we play epic crits in our world, so it's automatically max dice, and then you roll for additional damage.
Yeah.
And when you're getting critted for 68 damage right off the top, and then you roll really well on top of it, and they only had 78 hit points, and they were almost dead already, and I was like, yeah, no, you just got literally kebabbed by this devil, like straight up spike through the chest, very alien looking moment. Uh, but it was also one of the most amazing moments I've had in D&D for a long time, because like the party took that hard.
Yeah,
Like as a party, they took it hard.
for sure.
Um,
I think player deaths are always I they shouldn't be like every day, like, oh, every session someone dies, of course.
yeah,
But
I mean, unless
at
you're
the same
playing
time,
epic,
like a lot of times people they try way too hard to make sure that the players never die. And
there's no risk. Then
I personally, yeah, exactly.
there's
I think,
no interest of like, if you know you're gonna die or you know you could die, you're gonna think differently. Your brain is gonna not always say, I'm gonna try to kill everything I see.
yeah, and I think character deaths can really, I mean, the whole point of playing a role-playing game is to tell a story, and
Yeah.
oftentimes those deaths they tell really good
Oh
stories,
yeah, no, they
much
like
much better
their
than if the character lives
their
sometimes.
significant other who was playing like the guardian of their character, who was a Minotaur barbarian, like picked her body up and like ran to the nearest city by himself, nobody else behind him, let the rest of the party fight the devil as he's trying to carry this thing away, like days and days just running as fast as he can, taking exhaustion levels, just trying to get to the nearest place to save this woman. Um, and, and seeing the emotion at the next day where they were all just like, dude, we're drained. Like that was a
Hmm.
brutal session, and I was like, yes, but you guys realize now that it's a possibility that your characters can die. Um, so yeah, we kind of got on a tangent there, which is normal. This
A
is
little
not
bit.
normally what the tavern is about. So, but let's get back to, because I'm really curious. Because like I said, I've played some RPGs, but I'm curious which ones you're bringing up.
Well, there's one that I think people should definitely steal from, and that is D&D. Specifically fourth edition. I know
Okay.
it's kind of like universally reviled, but there are a few mechanics that I find
Yeah.
really interesting from there that they didn't keep for fifth edition, and I don't know why. One of them kind of ties in pretty well to the whole Goblin Horde thing is the minion system. So in fourth edition, some creatures could be tagged as a minion, and they would have one hit point. They would just
Okay.
die from anything. So you could
Yeah.
have, so if you wanted to have a whole horde of goblins, you could just make them minions. Then you have like one big guy, like an orc or
Yeah.
like the chieftain or something. Um, and the way it would work for AoE spells, if anytime they ever rolled for half damage and they got, half damage, they took nothing. Um,
Okay. So minions
so
just wouldn't take damage, but everybody else would take the
yeah,
half.
yeah. So I mean, AoE spells would probably wipe a whole lot of them out, but
Right. Yeah. No.
instead of save for half, would be uh, save for nothing.
Right. Yeah. No. I
I
like that. I think
Yeah, I always thought it
that's
was a really fun system.
mine's not because I hated fourth edition. Mine is because that was the small time frame between third and fifth that I kind of fell off of playing D&D for a while.
Hmm.
Like I was just out of college, just started my first job, kind of trying to get my bearings right type thing. And then I really got into actual like MMORPGs, which is the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my life. And it kind of took me away from D&D because, you're putting hours and hours on this game now. Uh, and after I read a little bit about it, I was like, oh, fourth edition's interesting. And, it sounds more like a video game to me, but
Yeah,
I don't really, I don't really know where I'm at with it because I've been playing third and 3.5 for the last, 10,
it's
10 plus
it's definitely a
years.
lot more streamlined towards combat and very
Yeah.
action oriented combat.
Which I also
And
know they were trying to do that because they were also that was around the time where they were starting to release all of their minis as
mhm,
like this is what you will use to play D&D now. Like that was kind of
yeah,
a drive that they were trying to push.
they were trying to integrate it with an online thing and
Yeah.
making everything standard so you could take your character from your campaign and plunk it into someone else's
Mm.
campaign just fine. And uh, that really it takes away things like, oh, here's a nifty magic item that I made up. You guys should
Right.
play
Yeah.
this.
Homebrew kind of throws out the window at that point. 'Cause you can't homebrew everything and then go to somebody else's campaign and expect it to work the same way.
Yeah, but they really had this idea that like people would go to conventions and bring their character for like
Yeah.
these.
I mean, it's
Um,
kind of what Adventure Leagues does, that kind of
yeah, that's
thing.
exactly what it was. It was
Yeah.
their,
It was just built for Adventure League only, really, is what it seemed to be
yeah, pretty
designed
much.
behind.
I mean they were done at the same time, so
Yeah. So any other things you pulled from fourth edition? Because like I said, I don't
uh,
know enough about fourth edition. I
yeah,
really
there was
want to
another
pick up
thing
fifth edition at
called
some point.
skill challenges, which were
Okay.
great. Um, it was basically uh, so let's say that you are um, let's say like you're on a rooftop chase. You're
Right.
chasing the bad guy over the rooftop, and instead of just okay, I move 30 feet, he moves 30 feet, I move 30
Hmm.
feet, he moves 30 feet. You do a skill challenge and you say, okay, as a group, we have to get 5 successes before we get 3 failures or something like
I
that.
didn't know that's where that came from. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
I use it all the time in my games to people. I was like, hey, group skill check. I was like, hey, you're going to tell me this is the goal you have to reach.
Hmm.
You're going to tell me what you're doing, and then I'm going to tell you the skill check you're going to use in order to do that.
Yes. That's exactly it. It came
Oh,
from
okay.
fourth edition and it was called skill challenges. So
Look at
yeah,
that, guys.
basically
Picking
someone who
up fourth
says,
edition. I didn't even know it. Look at that.
yeah, somebody says, okay, well, I just want to run really fast and like
Yeah.
jump, across. Okay, we'll roll athletics.
Right.
Usually the rule, I think with fourth edition, it was like you can't use the same skill twice.
Right.
Uh,
Or the DC would go up, and that's normally how I do it.
yeah,
So like you can't use the
um,
same skill check twice unless you want to increase the DC on whatever your skill check is.
yeah, and then like someone could do something like roll a survival check to find a shortcut,
Right.
or do a nature check to, I don't know, something, whatever somebody could think of. Is like if
Right.
they could
Yeah. If people
justify
are
it.
throwing out the most cockamamie crazy ideas to try to make sure that you can get those extra, especially if you're down to like, let's say you're playing 6 players, right? And you've got to
Mhm.
get 3 skill checks and you're still down. You only have 2 right now, but you're up. You're like your fourth or fifth person trying to figure this out, and you're like, what do I do now? Like, the athletics is done, acrobatics is done, survival's done.
Yeah,
At
well,
that point, you
maybe,
start throwing the random stuff. You're like, can I perceive? Maybe can I
yeah.
investigate really fast?
Or maybe the wizard wants to like throw a cantrip at him to like make him stumble. Like,
Yeah,
okay, roll
arcane
Arcana,
check. Yeah, those
and
are. I didn't realize that actually came from somewhere. I know I kind of developed it more so from listening to role playing podcasts and stuff, and then giving my own little flavor to it. But I didn't know
yeah,
that
I
it was
know
coming from fourth.
Matt Colville is a big advocate for that, and
Yeah,
he created his own system that's similar, but he kind of like I think in fourth edition
tokenized
it was it
the
was kind of
the
it was kind of
idea.
small, like it wasn't very like well fleshed out,
Yeah,
but he has a whole video on it where he fleshes it out a whole lot.
yeah. No, I like Matt Colville. I think he's a uh, great guy as well as a great dungeon master, and
Yeah.
he's a lot of cool tricks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he's great. And I know like people say that there's like the Matt Mercer effect
Yeah,
where people see Matt Mercer from Critical Role and how
yeah,
great he is, and they go, "Oh no, I could never do this. I can't be a
yeah.
DM because like I can't be like Matt Mercer." And he's like,
Yeah,
"That's okay." But
that's
then
all
there's
right.
all
Yeah,
but then there ended up being the Matt Colville effect, where Matt Colville, you watch his videos, and he's great at speaking. He's
yeah.
telling you all this stuff. He has all these great tricks, but then you watch his live plays, and he's just like a regular person. Like he's not as charismatic
Yeah, no,
as
Mercer
uh
and
yeah, as Matt
yeah,
Mercer, and you're like, oh wait, I can do this.
I can do
Um,
this.
which is great. I mean, not to say anything bad about
Well,
Matt
yeah, I mean, you
Colville,
got to look
but
at
it's
the
just like,
differences in styles of role play and also the
yeah,
differences in backgrounds. Like the people that you play, I tell people all the time because I've had this happen to me very few times actually. Everybody's like, as a professional DM, do you get that a lot? And I said, no, not really. I said,
mhm,
truthfully, I've only had it one or two times where they'll come up to me and I'll give them my price and we'll talk about the game that they're going to run. And they're like, well, how much acting experience have you had? And I was like, none.
yeah,
I'm like, well, how do you think like are you going to give us a this is the thing that always hits me. Are you going to give us a critical role experience? No.
no,
Here's my thought with that. And I told people I'm like, look at my price range as an average price range for a DM in this market. Quadruple to quintuple this and you'll find somebody with 20 years or over of acting experience that wants to do this type of thing. I say this is not I love what I do and I love to play games. Um, I'm not a professional voice actor. I never
hmm
play to be a professional voice actor. I'm a I'm a professional game master. That's what I do. I give a professional experience when playing games, and that's either online, in person, at conventions. And I tell people, and they always tell me, well, what does that mean? I said, personally, what it means is that I have an investment to make sure that I am there on time, that I have everything prepared to the point that I can. But you have to realize that chaos in D&D is a must. And
hmm
unless you want me to tell you everything that I'm preparing, or you're going to tell me what you want to prepare, I can never plan for everything, but I will sure as darn well try. And what I can, I'll make up on the fly. So, this is how this works.
yeah,
But like I said, I've got two full paid games, so I'm thinking I'm doing pretty good. And that's the highest I can go right now on paid games because of, every other project I'm working on right now that we talked about before we were on stream. Uh, but yeah, so fourth edition has some really cool ideas. Like I said, minions I've
yeah.
used before, skill challenges I've used before. So didn't know I knew fourth edition better. Hey, new sub, thank you for the prime sub. That helps us out a ton. I don't understand. Don't think people understand how much subs help Twitch creators like myself to keep this sucker running because it is a labor of love that I put many, 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 many hours into, and just the one sub makes it all worth it. So thank you very much. So fourth edition. Any
Yeah.
other things from fourth that you can think of?
One really minor thing is bloodied, or is
Bloodied.
where if something dropped to half hit points, they would be in a bloodied state. And there were a lot of mechanics that worked off of that.
Okay.
But part of it is that you don't know how many hit points that the monsters
Right.
have, but you knew if they were bloodied or not.
Yeah.
So just some sort of tell for the players that this monster is at half hit points. I
Crazy.
know a lot
I
of
use that too.
yeah, I know that one's pretty common just in general. Like,
Yeah.
well, how's the creature looking? And
Yeah.
most DMs won't be like, you have no idea how well he's
Yeah.
doing. I know, like on NADPOD, they always say, "Oh, he's on death's door," for like when they're
Yeah,
really
yeah.
when
So
him.
there's the three. So you've got bloody, mortally wounded, and death's door. Like it's kind of the three options that you give players to give them that idea in the back of their head. Now I've tried to dramatize it a little bit. So there's a difference between if he's bloodied, he's got a couple scratches. He seems to be a little more winded, mortal wounded. You're talking about a giant gash out of his side or bleeding profusely, that kind of thing. And then death's door, he's staggering. He's starting to stop moving he's moving slow. Normally, when I hit at death's door, I might give, depending on the type of creature and depending on what its natural instinct would be, that would be when I'd be like, okay, either he's going to try to plead to get away or he's going to, and a lot of times I do that at mortally wounded because I think
Yeah.
at 75% of your health, you're really at this point thinking, is this worth my life or not? Because, um, and that's a good point. I know a lot of people don't bring it up. Realize that your monsters are still monsters and they're still creatures, so they still have
They
natural
still care about the
instincts.
life.
So if you can think through that flight or fight or flight mentality when you're playing with these creatures, uh, things like displacer beasts, owl bears, actual beasts are not going to sit there and wait, you know, until they're dead to not run. Like they're animals. If they, unless there's a reason for them to stick around, they're gonna jump ship and they might come try to hunt you down later, but they're gonna jump ship and be done with you as fast as they can be. Uh, and that also goes for a lot of humanoid creatures. Like, I'm sorry, if I'm attacking somebody and he just put a sword through my chest and I know I could still get away, you better else believe it. I'm out of here.
It's,
Like,
so it's a funny thing in like in action movies where you have that one guy who just takes down 20 people effortlessly, and then people are still jumping at him. Like, dude, like
yeah. And then you've got the
you've
comedy
already
relief
lost.
guy who
Just
he looks at the guy and the guy just turns around and runs. Like,
yeah.
that should have been like 75% of those guys at this point. But yeah, no, and that's kind of where it comes into motive, right? So as long as the creatures have motive of why they're there and what they're doing, it can change their mentality. But if they don't have a motive, then you go back to the whole, fight or flight mentality, and that's where
Mhm.
you might see people leaving. Or particularly, I like to do it with mercenary type uh, bandits, even. Dude, a
Mhm.
bandit is not going to sit
Goblins.
there and try to kill you unless he absolutely has to, or
Yeah.
unless he knows he has the upper hand.
Or they might bargain for their life if they don't
Yeah,
think they can just
barter,
run.
plea.
Yeah.
We had a guy who was literally tied. He was a bandit that they, it was out of the three, three bandits came in, one bandit left type mentality. And the third one, they were like, oh no, we're just going to carry this guy around. So they wrapped, like, hog tied his hands to a tie, pulled him along through different rooms or different towns, told people what he did, like
Oh.
cruelty to banditry. But they were really good people, so they thought that they needed to make sure this man knew what he did wrong. Uh, I thought it was
That's
hilarious. I thought it was hilarious because they'll pull them into like a very nice, like, proper town, and these guys will come in bloodied from the fight in the jungle or the fight in the forest, carrying just leading this bandit up like a
how long
dog,
were they
like
leading him around?
they're just leading him around by hand. His hands were tied, and they still fed him. They still clothed him. They took care of him, but it was like,
How long did they have him?
I think in game it was like 2 months,
Wow.
and every couple days or so in game, they would ask him like, "Have you learned your lesson yet?" type thing.
Hmm.
And then if he would finally, his insight would, like, we had a very insightful character in the party, so it was, they would make sure, like, are you sure you've learned your lesson? And I would just roll, and it's like,
Zone of truth.
deception, deception, yeah, nope, nope, nope. And then the one time he finally was like, dude, you know you've carried me through 3 towns. I've had every single vegetable I've ever heard of thrown at me as I'm walking through the town. Like, can I just be on with my life? And they were like, well, where do you live? Like, that was like the ending thing. Like, they did this entire journey to take this dude back to his hometown to be like, restart your life and get your life back together. And they gave him money at the end of it. I was like, this is the most, like, heartwarming, horrific thing I've ever heard a party do. And they're all good people.
I mean, I know parties usually they try really hard to get pets, but that's a new one for me.
That's a new one, right? Said fed him, clothed him. He wasn't allowed to hold a weapon, of course, but
Yeah.
um, like, and it was funny because even when they ran into things where they had to fight, one guy always, like, you come here, and they hold, like, the I think it was the ranger or something, would just, tie him to the bandit and be shooting arrows while the bandit's just standing there not doing because he can't do anything. It was absolute chaos, but it was so much fun to watch them slowly break this bandit down to the point where they were like, okay, you've learned your lesson, everything's good. Where do you live so we can take you home and let you deal with it at this point with your life?
They didn't
And he,
humiliate him in his hometown.
yeah, no, they didn't humiliate him in his hometown. They gave him money, let him go back. Like I said, it was crazy, and then I had to come up with this crazy story about the guy every couple of sessions because they're like, "Hey, we're gonna scry on him, see what
Oh
he's
my
doing," and I was
gosh!
like, y'all are horrible people. It's like we just want to
But
make sure he's still following the right path. And we
I
had a
always love
really
when like
evangelical paladin in the party, and it was hilarious because every time he'd go anywhere, he'd say, by the light of Palor, this is who we are, and trying to convert everybody under the sun, including half of the party at the time. So
yeah, I always love when players interact with NPCs in and like it actually has some sort of lasting effect. Like it actually feels like they have an impact in the world, and it's
yeah,
not just you know.
yeah, we have a character on our stream who who's now like the third or fourth, like second or third NPC where he's completely like refocused their train of thought. Like there was this horrific. He's a bard. Well, he's what they call an agent of Jinx, which is an agent of chaos. It's a custom class that's designed through the company that we live in their setting. Um, but they're similar to a bard, so they play music, and this guy's music performance was just atrocious. But he lived in a small town, and that was the best he could do. And when he came into town and saw this, he like pulled him to the side and was like, "Dude, you need to fix your life." And gave him a new loot and was like, "Hey, go to this town to get new, better skills." And I was like, "I'm gonna have to know what this guy's doing like every couple sessions, aren't I?" And he goes, "No, no, no, I mean, no, nobody can scry or anything like that in our party." He's like, "But we are gonna find a way to check in on him." And I was like, "Of course you are. Of course you are. I wouldn't shoot. This character had a first name, didn't even have a last name at the time, uh, and was only supposed to be seen for like 30 seconds, and then became half of the session later that you know his sister and him were living in a small hovel at the end of the road, and she was just a basket weaver and he was a bard, and that was what they were living on, and they weren't living on much, and he always had this dream of traveling the world. And the idea was this guy literally convinced him that he needed to go on his dream. And I was like, oh my goodness, you all are crazy people that I love playing with. But it was so much fun just to watch them interact with this random NPC, of course. Uh, but yeah,
That reminds me of when I was doing the Curse of Strahd campaign, and I was prepping for it, and I was reading what other people were doing for Curse of Strahd, and so many people were saying, "Oh, these NPCs, people really love them, so make sure that you put a lot of focus on them." And these NPCs, no one ever cares about. And of course, my group, it was the exact opposite.
exact opposite. Yeah, that's
Yeah, so
hilarious.
there were these two mercenaries, Yevgeny and something else. I forgot their names, but um, the players started calling them Hans and Franz. And for those who don't know, we're really old, so it's an old Saturday Night Live skit where these two
Yeah,
guys are these extremely over the top Austrian bodybuilders. Like, we're gonna pump you
you
up.
up.
So I started role playing them as Hans and Franz,
That's hilarious.
and the party just absolutely loved them. And whenever they could, they wanted to bring Hans and Franz along. And Hans and Franz's stats were actually not that bad. Like they had multiple attacks and stuff.
Yeah,
So there was this part where like they had to fight this huge horde of people, and they were just like plink plink plink. They were just plinking them all off. Just every shot was taking someone down, and they were getting two shots around. It was just. oh my gosh. And they were just utterly loving these guys. And I'm like, I have no backstory for these guys whatsoever.
Yep.
There's
So I'm
nothing in
just
the
gonna
book.
throw them as two giant bodybuilders and go with life on this. Yeah, no, I'm telling you, sometimes you almost can't guess what your players are going to fall in love with characters, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've
Yeah.
had so much fun building those NPCs sometimes, and then those ones are the ones that they just, they talk to and they walk away. And
Hmm.
then you've got the random character that's just at the campsite for supposed to be there for 20 seconds to let before something else happens, and they're like, "So what's your story?" And I was like, "I hate you
Every
so
time.
much." uh, yeah, like, and then you've got to come up with something completely off the top of your head, and sometimes it makes a ton of sense, and other times you sit back after the session and you go, the hell did I think was gonna work with that? But whatever. We'll keep rolling with it. Let me go back to my notes and write this character who has literally one line of information on him, and I'm gonna write the whole page out for him because you're gonna go talk to him again next episode, and I'm gonna have to know more about this character. So,
Yeah,
because I
one
try
time.
not to stat anything that I'm not gonna need in combat, that kind of thing. Or I try not to give more than a small sentence or two of anybody that I know I'm not going to need more than a session. But some of those characters, I'm telling you, I could have never guessed that that was going to be the character they were going to just dead set face on, and it could be something as dumb as me putting the wrong type of like quirk to the character, and they're like, "Oh no, this quirk sounds fun. Let's talk to this guy more." And I was like, the guy who's got pink hair, the guy who has a lisp, or the female who has broad shoulders and and wears a tank top rather than whatever it is. Uh, it's just like those are the things that click with the characters sometimes, and you're like, okay, okay, let's go with this, I guess. Um,
Yeah, I ran a Call of Cthulhu one shot where
that's a
at the
fun
end,
game.
yeah, at the end, the characters are supposed to do this ritual and it takes hours. So what's supposed to happen is that you have people kind of like going in and out of the rituals so that way it can be sustained.
Right.
But I ended up with only two players. So I
So you
threw
can
in an
speed that ritual up a little bit.
well, I threw in an NPC just so they'd have, be able to switch people in and out. That was his entire purpose in the game. Of
Yeah.
course, I didn't tell them that. So
Right.
I just told him he's just an idiot. Like he's a complete moron. He's gonna follow you around, and that's his entire purpose. Like you can do whatever you want with him, but he's just
Yeah.
some idiot following you around. But they kept talking to him, and I kept having to find all these idiot things for him to say, and they didn't really like him. But then they ended up in this situation where it's like, oh, hey, you go first, because he's the expendable guy.
Yeah.
So he goes in
Red
first, and yeah, he tumbles down the stairs. And of course, one of my players is texting me right now, like, no, not this story.
the story.
Um,
Don't say that. I don't want to.
so he almost dies, and they end up feeling really bad because they tried to redshirt him, and they ended up like getting really attached to him. And then in the end, like this zombie horde comes and he ends up dying protecting them. And the players actually ended up crying. And I'm like, this is my idiot NPC that I threw in just so just so you wouldn't have to juggle two people. You could juggle three people in this.
Right.
They ended up like seriously crying over this guy. I'm just like, wow, he's just he's just this stupid college freshman stoner guy that has no personality, and just through them asking him a million questions and
Oh my goodness. That's
bouncing all these
funny
jokes
though.
off of him, he became such a thing. And now I've been reusing him in my games later just because just to torture
Right?
them.
Yeah, no, I've seen that so many times. I'm like really, this is what you're biting on? But it is what it is. And then you look back and you're like, okay. Um, and some of those are usually the goofiest names too, like
Mhm.
names right off the top of your head. Sometimes you get as bad as like, who's that? That's Carl. Like like instant like 4 or 5 letter names that you can barely, you know, everybody's Bob, right? Like that's the kind of like mentality you run into. But sometimes the characters just reach out to them, and
Yeah.
you don't know what else to do. So fourth edition skill challenges and
Yeah.
minion system. Uh, any other anything else from fourth edition, or we
Not from
jump
fourth
into a
edition that I can think
new
of.
new game?
Yeah. Um, there's one that on pretty much everyone's list of games you should steal from. It gets mentioned all the time is Blades in the Dark.
I have heard so much about this game, like so much to the point where like I'm about to reach out to somebody and be like, "Hey, if you buy me this book, I'll run a campaign on my show because it's like
Oh yeah. Um,
insane. Everybody loves this book."
be ready to go crazy with trying to read that book. So a big problem with Blades in the Dark is that the the setting and the mechanics go together so much that it's really hard to separate them. That basically, if you want to create your own setting, you basically have to rewrite the rules.
Oh, okay.
Um, so hey, here's this whole city with all these different gangs and all these different individuals and all these famous characters,
Right.
and try to remember them all. It's like you didn't make the system, so none of it
Yeah.
makes sense to you. And like, so
Yeah. That's crazy.
yeah, it's an interesting game, but the
Yeah.
setting is
So what can I take from
yes.
Blades in the Dark and bring it to my D&D game?
The flashback system.
Okay.
There is a resource that you can use to get flashbacks. So Blades in the Dark, for those who don't know, is it's basically like a thief game, like
Okay.
so you like go on heists, or you can do like assassinations, but basically like
Right.
CD under things. So but the way that it works is instead of planning things, you do the most rudimentary planning. So let's say that you want to uh, rob somebody uh, at a ball or something like that. So like some
Right.
big gala, and you just start. You're there. And
Okay.
then, so like, oh, so now you get to the guards, and the guards are gonna, frisk you for weapons. And you go, okay, well, I'm going to call for a flashback. And you say, okay, last week I did some investigation to figure out who the guards were, and then I bribed him. And so then you do a short little role playing session, and then
Oh,
you
neat.
roll for that. So then you do the whole like, oh, roll to bribe or investigation or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if you're successful, you'll flash back to the present, and you'll give a little nod to the guard, and you just walk in. But if you failed, you get to the gate and you're like, oh shit, that's him. Like, we better find a different way in. um so all sorts of things. So like
Yeah. That's
like
interesting. So on my Tuesday nights when I'm not playing, when I'm not GMing, we do a game over at Last Game Board called "Whose Role Is It Anyway?" where we
mhm.
each get our character handed to us that night. Like handed a character at the beginning of the night, and they're like, "Hey, you're role playing this character." But he plays with something called flashback points, where it's kind of used instead of if you're going to use a point of inspiration. So like if you're going to re-roll a d20, you have to describe then where in your history or where in a moment of time
Yes,
that would have happened.
I've heard
Um,
of people doing that. I
yeah,
do
so
like that.
that's interesting. So now I'm seeing where things are being pulled from now. So it's nifty.
But yeah,
Like
so I do like that system, especially because like if you were trying to run a heist in D&D or most other RPGs,
yeah.
players will take way too long to plan things,
Oh
and
God,
then
yeah.
eventually they'll just be like, why don't we just climb the wall or like something.
Something rudimentary. You're like,
like some so like just,
yeah,
oh, those past 4 hours of you guys bickering over what to do is just, oh, just throw it out the window. Like none of that was
yeah,
useful. But it can also be things like So anyone's watched The Godfather, like the gun that was hidden in the bathroom,
Right.
the toilet in the restaurant. It's just like you could just do something like, oh, I'm gonna call for a flashback
Yeah.
where
I dropped this off
yesterday
in.
I went over and do that. And you have it's a limited resource, so you can't just keep doing it all the time. And depending on how big of a flashback it is, you have to spend more of it. And if it calls for any sort of roll, then you have to retroactively roll and see how well it does in the future. So if you call for a flashback and you fail your roll in the flashback, well, then the future is
Right. Yeah, no, I
you're
completely
kind of
agree. I
wasting your
like
point.
that.
Yeah. So that's a really fun system, and I think it's not too hard to um, put into. Actually, I was thinking about it. Somebody, I should have looked this up earlier, but somebody actually did. It was like a 1 or 2 page thing where they converted that system into D&D.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it's a pretty rudimentary. I mean, anyone who
Yeah.
listening can probably just figure it out, but it's basically the same thing. I'm sorry, somebody can probably Google it. Just do
Yeah, I think
late
I think more
dark.
so like I said, what we try to do with this specific thing is I want to know like neat things that happen in other games, like the flashback system or the minion
Mhm.
system, those types of things that I can add to my game without me having to rewrite anything. Like, this isn't going to break a
Yeah.
campaign. This isn't going to break mechanics. This is going to enhance a story. Um, and I know it's really weird because a lot of you've kind of got that back and forth feeling between game masters. Some people are like it's a story. Some people are like no, it's still a game. Like,
Hmm.
and it goes back and forth because I know
Story game.
personally, uh, people like Matt Colville, Matt Mercer, those they're really into the whole idea of you're telling an ongoing narrative, you're telling an ongoing story. But then if you listen to another very impressive YouTuber, the DM's layer, he's like,
Yeah.
it's not a story, it's a game. It's for you to you know hit these points, get the and I guess it's just how you want to play the game.
Hmm.
But for me personally, I love a storytelling scenario. I love the collaborative writing behind it, or telling it rather. And that flashbox system is just really a cool idea because then you'd be like,
Yeah.
hey, explain more to this. So like, and I really liked it when people were like, hey, instead of me using a burst of inspiration to re-roll something, like, hey, where would this have come from? It's not just, a flash of inspiration. It's where in your mind or where in your history would this have appeared before that you could be like, oh no, I know about this. I just, it's been sitting back here somewhere 10, 15 years and
Yeah.
mom read it in a book somewhere, something so simple as that. And then depending on how elaborate the story would be, would depend on how much bonuses you could give them to their next check. So,
Yeah. I know a similar thing I've seen some people do is so a lot of players will spend way too much time shopping.
yeah,
And so one thing you can do is you spend X amount of gold to get Y amount of supplies.
right,
And then later on you spend supplies and you roll a die, and depending on how niche that item is, you'll just have it. So like you just, oh, I'm gonna spend all my money on some supplies, and then you get to an
right,
encounter and it's like, oh, I need a health potion. Did I buy a health potion? You're like, well, you're probably gonna buy a health potion. Let's make the DC like 7 or 8,
right,
and if you roll that, then yeah, you have a health potion. You spend a supply, get a health potion, or like, I got some lock. Like, do I have some lock picks? Well, if you're a rogue, you probably already have it, but like
right.
some
Yeah,
people
no,
not.
100%.
But if something more obscure like a vial of acid or something, it's like,
Yeah.
well, maybe not. So that's one way of
Why
speeding
does the paladin have a bottle of acid?
things. So yeah, that's a similar thing where you just have a limited amount of resource. So this one you actually buy with in-game money,
Yeah. Huh.
and then you just roll for things. You just kind of skip the shopping.
Right.
Um, I
My
can't think
players love shop. I
of a
don't know
specific
what
game
it
that.
is. They go way overboard. Like I can literally a 3 hour session will be nothing but shopping for sometimes with my teams. They're like,
Yeah,
nope, we want to go everywhere. All right, fine.
yeah, I
New
know. I know.
city,
Even like,
you just made a ton of money. Go to your life's galore. The ones I love about it though is and the one thing I don't the one thing I miss about 3.5 and 3 is there was so many different things you could buy.
Hmm.
So much you could buy. And in 5 they kind of shortened it. Like there's only this much you can technically buy and then you have to make up the rest. And I was like, well, here's what it is. So if they want that, they want those fancy, I want armor, but I want it to look this way. Okay, so it's an extra, 10 gold for customization of pretty, whatever you're trying to do, depending on what their price range and what your average economy is. But
I know even with the Critical Role, people got really annoyed sometimes with just how long they would spend shopping. But it's like they've got like 10 players
yeah,
trying to
and they
shop for
all
everyone.
go separately. Oh,
Well, oftentimes they try to have like one person negotiate for everyone,
yeah,
but like they tried to shorten it, but even
yeah,
so, like sometimes it got a little long.
yeah. No, there's episodes where I'm like, this is 4 hours of shopping. That's all this is. I just wasted 4 hours of my life because I'm invested in these characters. However, all they did was shop.
Hmm.
Like especially season two. Season two, I was like, every time they'd go to this new area or they'd get this new upgrade in life, all of a sudden they're now this. I'm like, oh my goodness, why are you doing that? What is this doing? Oh no, my thing is broken.
Does this
Um,
end at 10:30?
it is already 10:30. It's 10:17.
Yeah. When does this end?
It ends uh, normally between 10 and 11.
Okay,
So
got a little
yeah,
bit of time.
it's normally it depends on how much we're talking.
'Cause I've got a few more to go through.
Yeah, no, you're good. No worries. That did. Yeah, no, no
Oh, I've also
worries.
got a few more things to show off too. Might
There we go.
also
Yeah,
get mad if
we'll
I
do a
don't.
little presentation here in a little bit. Let me see if my YouTube's working. Um, for our new people here on channel, one thing we are trying to do is we are trying to get our YouTube up to, and it's not working, of course. Why are you not working? Um, it's not playing properly. Anyway, our YouTube currently is at 78 viewers or followers on that, subscribers, and we need to get to 100 so I can get rid of that stupid URL code. If I get 100 followers on YouTube, I can put my tabletop misfits there and then I can feel a little bit more better about myself on YouTube. So, if you guys can help me out there and send that to everybody you know so we can get to 100 subscribers, that would be absolutely amazing and I would love you all forever. Not that I don't already. Um, all right, so let's see. So we've done Blades in the Dark. We've
Yes.
done fourth edition.
Hmm.
Any others?
Another one in the same system as Blades in the Dark is I'm blanking on the name. Monster of the Week, which is basically think.
I got yelled at after not remembering that that was a thing. I had somebody message me earlier today, and they're like, "So are you basing it off of the system?" I said, "No, no, no. It's kind of like who's that Pokemon? You just kind of guess for the week, and you find to have some fun with that, and we go with it that way." But yeah, no, Monster of the Week. I didn't think that that was a thing. Like I forgot because I've talked to the guy from Critical Dice before, and
Mhm.
but I didn't. My brain just didn't wrap around that the name was the exact same thing as what his game is. But that seems to be an interesting game. I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, it's powered by the Apocalypse system, which is the same as Blades in the Dark. It's basically think like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Supernatural, Dresden Files, Grimm.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's a very vampires, werewolves. Modern day.
yes. Um, but one of the things it does that I find pretty interesting is um, the way that the monsters work. So it tries to make the monsters this looming threat, and you have to find information about them to actually take them on. You can't just, oh, there's the monster, and then you go fight it, like D&D style. You have to actually as you progress through the story, you'll find out where it is, what does it want, and most importantly, what is its weakness. Without its weakness,
Yeah,
you have no way of defeating it. And the weakness could be something like a ritual, or like shocking it with
yeah.
lightning,
Call of
or
Cthulhu is a lot like that too.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because you
Uh,
can't just go out and kill things in Call of Cthulhu. Like I didn't like
de-
the first time I
depends on
played
what it
that, and I was
is,
like,
yeah.
"This is what I've got," and they're like, "Yeah," and I was like, "And this is what I'm fighting." And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I'm not making it out of this alive. Not happening." But
Yeah,
no, I like that. I like the idea of giving players information, especially if they're going to go out and look for it,
mhm.
on how to deal with a threat. And I think
Yeah,
those are for things where, if you're walking into a village and they're like, hey, this thing is terrorizing the village.
yeah,
If you as a player want to take the time then to go to the local library, talk to the people, you know, talk to the crazy hobo at the end of the street, whatever it is, to decipher something. Maybe this thing has a weakness. Maybe this thing has a drive. Like it only eats this specific type of
right.
maybe it only eats elderly people. Maybe it only eats children. Whatever it is. Um, but I think that gives a creature much more believability. It kind of breaks away from just being a fantasy creature at that point because
Yeah,
there's
for
something
sure.
to it.
And if you take that from the urban fantasy setting of Monsters of the Week and you put it into D&D, well, now you have something kind of like The Witcher, where
Right.
you have to investigate, figure out what this is, figure
Yeah.
out, like what its weakness is going to be, and then use it against it. And
Yeah. There's
some
a
players
guy
might find
out
it.
on YouTube called Bruzy who does it's called Monster Witchery, and he's come up with this concept that you if you want to witcherize a monster, you half their health, but every CR level you give them a resistance to something,
Hmm.
and every 3 CR levels you give them an immunity to something. And it can be so simple as, like they're immune to, lightning damage, or they're vulnerable, but then you give them a vulnerability somewhere within that. You have give them at least one vulnerability though, where you can, even if it's so specific, I guess it'd be the higher the CR rating, the more specific the vulnerability will be. So it's like must be a recently struck twig of light, like from lightning, within the last 48 hours, and has to be stabbed into it to make it vulnerable to
Hmm.
any damage. Like something stupid ridiculous, but if you've taken the time to figure that out, well, now that monster is going to be a lot easier to kill.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I really like those. I like doing that with my players. Um, I like
Yeah.
doing that with my dungeons too. I don't know why. I just think it's really cool if if you're gonna go research this area and figure out what this thing is from and whatnot, and you're taking that time to do so in game. I'm gonna give you kind of a boon from that. Like you're trying hard to come up with how does this thing work, and that could be anything from you walk into a room and you see that there's 3 different symbols on the on the ceiling, and there's a plate of water in the middle. What do these all connect to? Whatever it is, and then once they, well, what does that symbol look like? What does that symbol look like? Okay, now you're starting to investigate each of these pieces, and now you're figuring out what the puzzle is. And I
Yeah,
think monsters can be just as puzzle oriented as rooms and dungeons.
for sure.
So I really
And
like that one.
yeah, you brought up Call of Cthulhu, and it is kind of similar in that vein. For the 99% of people who've never played it, Call of Cthulhu actually has a skill called library use.
Yes,
It is a very important skill
it is a very
in Call
important
of
skill.
Cthulhu, and it's usually not for defeating monsters, because in Call of Cthulhu, usually the point isn't to defeat a monster, and if it is, it
It's to
becomes
send
very
that
obvious
sucker back
how.
to wherever it came from
Yeah,
normally.
that's usually what you do, is like banish it or something,
Yeah,
or it's something like it's a small horror, like it's a dude who's half frog or something.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's library use is usually very important to find out where you need to go and things like that. And player characters are called investigators in that game for a
yep,
reason.
yep.
Um,
And it's very normally it's very like 1920s,
mhm.
1930s LA noir type feel. If you're into like the whole Dick Tracy, that kind of mentality.
Dick Tracy's a bit cartoony compared to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And then there's other like there are other versions of it though that have developed over time. So now there's like medieval versions and there's
Oh man,
different areas.
the D20 version was so bad.
Oh, the one that
For
who was that Peterson wrote?
I don't know, but it was for
Are you talking about the the fifth edition supplement for Call of Cthulhu, or are you talking about like the D20
yeah, so
version?
so with D&D third edition, um there was something called the SRD, can't remember what that stood for, but basically it was this open source system where like anyone could make uh, a could publish a game that was based off of third edition D&D,
Oh,
and
okay.
they actually published an official Call of Cthulhu
Oh,
version,
wow.
and it was just bad because D&D is not meant for a horror game like that. So a lot of the that version of Call of Cthulhu was like, oh hey, let's take a shotgun and shoot these guys. It's like, no, that's not the same game.
Right. No, I completely agree. Um, sorry, guys. I'm trying to find. Sandy Peterson wrote Cthulhu Mythos. It's a 5e fantasy supplement of 4D&D.
Oh no, that one's much different.
Yeah. It does, though, they do, it gives you how to use insanity points with it, which is kind of neat.
Yes.
And there's also 25 different old gods and 100 different new monsters. But like I said before, Call of Cthulhu monsters are way different than
Hmm.
D&D monsters because they're not something you play around with.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, like in Call of Cthulhu, you could play a guy with a cane or something like that. Like
yeah,
you're not a hero. You're just
you're
some
just a
person.
guy,
Yeah.
you know.
So
You're just a
um,
crazy guy who tries to, learn the other side of the picture.
yeah. So if anyone's interested in playing a game where you're not a Marvel superhero, you're just some cop down on his luck or whatever, you can give Call of Cthulhu a try.
Surprisingly, kind of do my little pitch here is if you go on my YouTube, we ran a Call of Cthulhu game for three sessions a couple months ago. One of our
Oh, yeah.
players ran it, and we were running. I think we ran through one of the early like basic modules just to test it out, and because none of us had ever played.
Hmm.
But it was a lot of fun. I will say though, Chaosium has does a very good job of having plans for everything. Like it's insanity how much they planned out to the point of one of ours. It was like, hey, you can call. Oh shoot! I wish I knew one of my players was here because they know exactly who the person is that I'm thinking of. Uh, it's not Louis Armstrong.
Hmm.
So you can like it says it's like, hey, Louis Armstrong plays at this place. This is his. This was his trumpet or his saxophone at one time, whatever it was, and then there's actually a point in the book where you can see what Louis Armstrong would say to the players if you called them. And I was like, that's in the book? Like,
That was the one you played.
yeah, that was the one we played.
If you if you do play again, I
Half of us failed
suggest.
it, mind you. Like 90% of New York was turned into zombies. Just
Oh,
it was a
right.
bad day.
If
Yeah.
you do play again, I suggest. I'm pretty sure it's in the core book, Edge of Darkness. It's a classic. It's from like first edition, and
Okay.
it holds up.
Yeah,
It's
we
really
played two of them. We also played one where we had to go to this small cabin, and pretty much there was a creature that was in the ceiling that was
Oh,
stuck
yep,
in.
that's Edge of Darkness.
Oh yeah, so we already played that one too. So
Yeah,
that's on our
that one's
stream as
great. I
well.
love that one.
Yeah, we actually figured that one out surprisingly.
That was the one I was talking about with the NPC that died with the ritual at the end.
Okay, yeah, no, we thankfully our player, or not our player, but our DM rolled really really low because one of our players just stuck his head straight up into the attic where that
That's
creature was and came back with like giant scars across, like scratch marks across its face. But
that's
that
how
was
the NPC
because,
almost got red shirted.
yeah, yeah. So the idea was if he would have done like just a little bit more damage, he would have just been decapitated. And I was like, wow. And that's when I realized that we were playing a completely different game than D&D. Because that was the first monster I'd ever seen in Call of Cthulhu, and we're all level one investigators. So I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, this will be fun. And
and
then,
that's the game where like, I mean, there's no levels, but like basically,
yeah,
if you were to like level up, you don't get any more hit points.
yeah, you
You're
don't get
still
more
just
hit
some guy.
points. You're still a human. You're still a normal person.
And yeah, that thing it'll one shot people.
Yeah. And you don't realize it. And I tell people that all the time. Like, you want to play a game where death is a reality? Call of Cthulhu is death is a reality, or madness. You're either
Hmm.
gonna die or you're gonna wait until you go mad because you've seen way too much weird shit.
It's a very bleak game.
Hmm. There really is no winning at Call of Cthulhu,
No, there's you beat the scenario, not the
not the game. You beat the
yeah.
scenario.
There are no happy endings.
Yeah. So Monster of the Week, Call of Cthulhu, Blades in the Dark, fourth edition.
Hmm.
Any more on that list?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna mention four of them at once. Uh,
Okay.
they're pretty similar.
Okay.
Um, The Quiet Year, uh, Beak, Feather, and Bone, and then Ex Novo and Ex Umbra. They are all games about building a world with your players, and they all involve drawing on a map.
Okay.
So the first two, The Quiet Year and Beak, Feather, and Bone, are you're drawing cards from a standard 52 deck,
Mm-hmm.
and then it says in the book like what kind of event happens. So I know like with The Quiet Year, it'll ask you a question like, oh, the youngest person in your community has died. Like, how does the community deal with that? And then
Right.
you have to. But the thing is that like you don't write anything. Everything is you drawing on the map.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm trying
and
to I'm trying to look through. There's another one we played. Dawn of Worlds is another one.
I don't know that one. I'll have to.
Yeah, yeah, that one we played a drunk Pantheon. That was a lot of fun.
Can you
We
text that
we
one to me?
used in, we
My
used
keyboard is dying.
Incarnate, and every age, so each age you got so many die, or so many points, and then you could use that many points to do certain things in the world. So
Hmm.
like if you wanted an ancient organization or like an ancient world, um, you would have to spend a ton of points at age one. But by age three, where everything is being populated by people, it actually takes more points than to change an ecosystem than it would to put a new civilization down. And it just grew from there. I think it's everybody did 5 rounds per age, and that grew the history of the world very quickly. But we did it as literally a drunk game on with Incarnate. So you just randomize the continent, and then we gave everybody screen share control, and people would just draw on the map until it looked something what they wanted. But yeah, no, that's a free one too, mine, by the way. So that's the other ones. I don't know if they're all free, but Dawn of
I
Worlds is free.
I'm not sure about the other ones, but they're really cheap.
So you
If they're
said
not
Beak,
free.
Feather, and Bone.
Yes.
Okay, so I just stumbled. So I went into a page, and it said the complete list of world building games. All the other ones you've said are not on there, other than the Quiet
Really?
Year. The Quiet Year's on here, and what you Bleak. or Beak,
Beak.
Feather, and Bones is on there,
Yes.
but Ex Nova and Ex Umbra are not on here.
Okay.
So
Um, Beak, Feather, and Bone is cute. It's basically think like Kenku. You're building like a Kenku city.
yeah.
Um, it's interesting. Again, you're drawing cards and doing things based off of that. Ex Novo is building a city, and Ex Umbra is building dungeons.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So
So I don't know if the Quiet Year is the same as Dawn of Worlds. Dawn of Worlds is building your your continent, your world.
yeah,
Uh,
same.
it's very
Quiet Year
large
is
scale.
sort of similar. It's like you're building a community,
Okay.
but it's like you're also building like the
Yeah.
terrain around the community as well. So like you draw like a river or like mountains and whatnot.
Yeah. So like I said, there's another one called Microscope. It's kind of similar. I read that one too.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of that one.
There's a whole bunch of them on this website. I've never heard of half of them. Now I'm like holding the website hostage. I'm like, I'm gonna leave this on my screen. I'm gonna go check all these out when I'm done. Um,
Yeah, and
you know,
if anyone's starting a new campaign, definitely check one of those out because that could be fun to do with your players. Is actually like
there's
building it all
another one
together.
out there, and I always forget it. It's either Dungeon Saga or Dungeon Age. Um, I'll have to float around and I'll keep an eye out for it. We played it when I was over in Korea with a bunch of friends, where everything is built at the moment before you even start playing. You have to
Mhm.
flesh out the entirety of like, well, how do you feel about elves? How do you feel about dwarves? If dwarves are going to be in the world, how do you feel about this? And it all builds um, to a campaign very quickly, and it's all done through track sheets. Uh, Hero Age, I think.
Um, so the Quiet Year, I know they played that on the Adventure Zone.
Okay.
So if anyone's interested in checking out how one of these works, the Adventure Zone Ether Sea, which is their current campaign, um, the first few episodes is them going through the Quiet Year to build their
Oh,
campaign, and
neat. Yeah, I might have to check that out then because I've heard the Adventure Zone. I've seen like their crazy cool looking intro.
mhm.
I've never taken the chance to check with them or like watch it yet though because it's very hard to keep up with like 5 or 6 of those really long
They
streams.
also go through a whole campaign of Monster of the Week as well.
Oh, nice.
If anyone's interested in that one, but like, I mean, we could sit here and plug live plays all
Oh God,
sorry,
yeah, no,
actual
there's
plays,
live
yeah.
plays everywhere. I mean, that's what I run. I run a live place, so
Yeah.
I know. Uh, but
We could
yeah,
probably
we
like,
could run live plays all day long.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, these are really cool ideas, and like I said, I'm gonna definitely check those out for world building because I really think it is kind of cool if you really want to get your players invested to start there at that beginning. World build with your players for session zero, and or what
Yeah,
we
and
call
it's your players
we
will
have a
really
show
throw you
called
off too.
-1. So
Yeah, your players will really throw you off too with the kind of stuff that they'll do in your system.
yeah,
Like, I never would have thought of that. And then you run with it, and then now you have this whole world that runs off of this bizarre idea that one of your players came up with. And
right,
it's
exactly. Um, yeah, so that's 5. So guys, we've got fourth edition with the minion system and the skills challenges. I already use that. I love it. It's definitely a good opportunity. Blades in the Dark with their flashback system, which I think is super simple to implement into D&D.
Mhm.
We use it with inspiration. That's kind of how we do ours on the show that I play on. Monster of the Week. We've talked about the Witcher type theory. Uh, I want to touch real quick with Call of Cthulhu because that library use. I kind of think that
Mhm.
is an awesome way to use that intelligence checks that most people don't like to use in D&D. They're all like intelligence is useless. Um,
Investigation checks.
I think I'm gonna do an entire show on how to improve or utilize intelligence in D&D because everybody's like, "Oh, it's a dump stat." Not if you use it right, it's not, because you can ask all sorts of questions with intelligence rolls and make it very fun for your players to learn new things in your game. And then, of course, the Quiet Ear, Ex Nova, Ex Umbra, Beak, Feather, and Bone. Those are all
What
ones
was the
that.
one you mentioned?
What's that one? Oh, Dawn of Worlds.
Dawn of Worlds. I'll have to
Yep.
check that one out too.
Yeah, Dawn of Worlds is the one I mentioned. Um, yeah, these are all for if you're starting your new campaign or
Hmm.
you're starting into a new city and you want to kind of flesh it out before you start playing in it.
I haven't tried out Ex Umbra, but that one is specifically about building dungeons.
Fair.
So you could possibly use that one without um, building a whole new
Yeah.
campaign.
And surprisingly enough, and I know this is a crazy thought because nobody ever actually does this because I'm guilty. I was guilty of it for a very long time. There are actual tables in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide that help you build these random things. You just have to go look for them, especially dungeons and stuff like that. And then there are a bunch of supplement companies now that do even more into that. Like one of my favorites currently, I use in almost every single one of my campaigns right now, just because I love the way they design their tables and the design for just inspiration. Is anything coming from Nord Gaming? I know I'm not sponsored by Nord Games, but they are amazing, and I buy pretty much all their stuff just for inspirational reasons. And they have some really cool stuff, especially if you're looking for traps. That's a it's a wicked book. The trap book is fun. But yeah.
Not was it Grimtooth or whatever it is?
Oh, Grimtooth traps. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
Grimtooths too. That's a little older, but yeah, I know that one.
those are fun.
The way Nord works is the traps don't work the same way. So there's three different pieces to a trap. So you've got your trigger, you've got your contraption, and your result types, or your something I load, I think is what it's called. And and they're based on the five different versions of traps. So you've got all the way from alarm to deadly, and then you can roll on all these tables and build a trap out of just random things. And then you take your mind and you go, okay, how would this work? And then you start actually fleshing it out in your own brain and come up with some really crazy traps. I've come up with some neat ones. And they have the same thing for puzzles in the back of that book too. So that was some pretty cool
Oh,
stuff.
puzzles are always.
Puzzles are hard sometimes to come up with though.
Yeah,
You, you
sometimes you'll come up with one and you're just like, oh, this is an impossible one, and your players just get it instantly.
yep, and then you
And there
come
are
up
other
with a super
ones where
simple
like,
one and your players
yeah,
can't figure it out.
and it's like the dumbest thing ever. It's just like this is like matching two colors together,
Yeah.
and like they can't even figure it out.
Yep. I just did this with a party of mine actually. They're going through Tomb of Annihilation, and in Omu there's the nine trickster god shrines, and they each have their own little tricks to them.
Mhm.
And I've kind of enhanced those to make them more fun for the players. And the one is they kept getting petrified when they tried to walk out of this room because they never turned a light on. And I'm like, it says the only way you can leave is in the light. And as soon as they walked and they had all the burning torches around them, but nobody went to go pick up a torch because they were like, we don't want to do that. So every time they'd walk out of the light, they would instantly petrify and get all mad at me for it.
Oh
So
man, or like prophecies. It
yeah,
seems like anytime you ever give your players prophecies, they
prophecies,
focus on some
dreams.
weird word, some obscure thing. You're like, it's just
Yeah, no, I
nothing to do with
completely
what I'm trying to tell you guys.
right. No, 100%. All right. Well, we're almost at our 2 hour thing, and we've got about 15 more minutes. So I know that you guys have some stuff you want to show us. And I'm excited.
Yes, yes. I already showed off our upcoming.
Upcoming mimic trays, guys. That's
Yes,
cool.
we've
I
been
like the
excited about
fact
these
that
for a
that
while.
eye looks legitimately like menacing.
Maybe I can give you guys a closer look here.
Look at that thing, guys. That thing's cool. Yeah,
Yeah, we actually have another design, and I wasn't smart enough to bring it home with me.
that's all right.
but when it gets released, you guys can check it out.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing, this is appropriate for the current time, is our heart tray, and of course, there's lots of glare.
Yeah.
Um,
And that thing has the metal piece that goes over top of it, right?
no, this is acrylic lid. It's a magnetic lid.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant. Yeah, it's got the magnetic lid that goes over top of it, which is really cool.
But yeah, it's a little dice holder that comes out.
Yeah. Look at that,
Of
guys.
course, I'm going
That's
to
really
spill all my
neat.
dice here. There you go.
Got
And
room for
then,
all sorts
oh
of random
no, the
dice.
camera. And then underneath it is a velvet
A
dice
dice
tray.
tray. Look at
You can
that.
just roll your dice in that. Super cute.
So for if you're looking for a good Valentine's Day present, that's a good opportunity
Yeah,
right
these have
there.
been. We have not been able to. We've been like barely able to keep up with these. Like
Oh, I bet.
we've been selling a lot this month.
I bet.
Um, so if you want them before Valentine's Day, I would suggest you know doing it sooner rather than
Ordering
later.
very soon.
And this one's a popular one. Is our oh my gosh, there we go. The display tray.
Yeah,
It actually
that one's
has
real pretty.
a spot for each one of your standard 7 dice.
Yep.
And we also have lots of different dice towers. And of course, I brought a clear one with a green screen because I am a genius.
It's all right.
Um,
And you guys can actually go on their website and you can see the mass. Like they've got one that's like 6 foot tall. I swear. That you guys
yes, the
bring
Tower
to.
of Babel. That
Yeah,
one
the Tower of
is,
Babel. That thing's really cool.
we bring it to shows and
Yeah.
it hurts my ears after a
Oh,
while.
I can only imagine.
But yeah, my boss is like, "Oh yeah, take this one. It's really simple." I'm like, "Why am I showing off a really simple one?" But we have really fancy ones. We've got ones with like this pearlescent uh, paddles instead of just like a plain black. They're like this
Oh, there's
shiny.
power.
Yeah, and we've got ones with like Cthulhu etched all the way around.
Oh,
So like
wow.
his face is right here and his wings are spread across the back.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. Also, you can take it off and it fits nearly every single one of our trays. And of course, it's not
Yeah, it's
showing.
being mean. It's okay. I do
Uh,
agree though. Yeah, and you can check out all this stuff on their website, which I posted there in the
yep.
chat. So just
C4labs.com. If you are
c4labs.com.
if you're in the UK, I suggest looking us up on Etsy instead, because the VAT tax after Brexit is been a pain, and getting all that worked out is not fun. So if
I
you
bet.
don't want to pay an arm and a leg extra, go through Etsy if you're in the UK.
Huh. So yeah, all of our UK friends that are going to watch this later on tonight, probably, or you know, sometime tomorrow, uh, make sure you go through their Etsy for that. So,
One last thing to show off is oh my gosh,
ooh,
it's an octagon tray with full print. We've been doing a lot of full prints lately, and
yeah,
this one's been a popular one.
yeah. No, so what I did is they came to me and they said, hey, we want you guys to uh, we want to sponsor you guys for our custom new trays, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
so I gave them an easy one, and then I was like, let's see how good they are. I'm telling you, these guys blew me away. So you know, there's not a lot to this one, as you can see. You know, it's our wonderful blue tabletop misfits. Still got the hard, but it's still kind of smooth there. Um, and I was like, okay, this is awesome. But when I threw them something that I was like, there's no way this would come out as good as it did, and even my players were blown away by this thing. So this is our entire group shot. There's probably, I don't know, 60,000 different colors in that thing. And I can specifically
It's
not see
invisible now.
anything whatsoever. Which way am I going? There we go. No, come on. Don't be. We had this working before stream. There we go. So as you guys can see, fully colored. All of it is immaculate. And our entire group was blown away when we saw that thing.
And
So
that's on vegan leather, right?
yes, I believe
So
so.
it makes a nice little.
Yeah.
That's the sound of vegan leather. It's a little more soft for those
Yeah,
who care.
yeah. And then if you really want to get fancy, and this is something I picked up at Gen Con for all of our streamers out there. Um, Silicone dice work really well for this kind of thing. So if you don't want to hear all your dice crack all over the place when you're on stream, those are pretty nifty to use as well. They do bounce a little bit more than they probably need to at times, but yeah.
Oh yes, be careful of those in dice towers.
All
They
right,
might go flying across the room. We have had this happen before.
that's hilarious. But
But
yeah,
yeah, the one with the blue top. Can you hold it up again?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's the pearlescent acrylic. It doesn't show up too well right now, but yeah, the paddles on our dice towers, you can get them in all sorts of colors with that nice
Yeah, no.
swirly.
I'm telling you, we knew these guys could do work like this. Like we've seen their stuff, we've been following them for a while, but when they asked for customized stuff and they blew us away with it, I couldn't be more happy with the results. You guys are awesome. I'm telling you. Uh,
Thanks.
so
Yeah, I love working there. It's it's like working in a toy store. It's great.
right? No, if you guys were closer, I'd be like, hey, can I get a job? Because like I think it's cool. Like, um, but yeah, no, I think we live on the exact opposite coasts, so that's not a
Yes, we
not a
are on
possibility yet.
we're on the West Coast near Seattle. But
Yeah,
yeah, this one, the heart tray, it's real nice. It's interesting. So most of our trays are designed by our main artist, but this one was actually designed by our. So we don't just do tabletop stuff. We also do um, a lot of cases for like the Raspberry Pi and Arduino, like little tiny computers. For those who don't know, um,
yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, that's nifty.
yeah. So if anyone's interested in that, they can check that out too. But one of our guys, he designs those cases, the our tiny little cases, and he came up with this, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I love this thing. Um,
I think with that shine on it, like they have with the like with our blue case, like that just pop. It makes it pop so much. Um,
yeah, the pearlescent on it,
yeah,
it's gorgeous. Here, let me you can see that. I
yeah.
don't know what's focusing, but it's a gorgeous color.
Oh
And it
yeah, no,
comes
it
in
is.
also a purple, and then like this uh,
It's like purple, and I
purplish,
think there's an
like
actual like
yellows.
reddish pink
Yeah,
one. Yeah, I've seen the three different versions, but it's definitely we'll do a little show off of those on our TikTok and other social medias this week probably as well, or this month as well, because this month is all sponsored by C4 Games or C4 Labs, who
yeah,
are incredible. Um,
yeah. So
so
check out c4labs.com. If you have any questions, you can email them to help@c4labs.com.
but yeah, do you guys have any questions for them, me, before we close out for the evening? Looks like we're starting to either people are still just lurking or they turned us on mute. It's the one thing I tell people. I say, you gotta watch muting people because then they can't hear us if we're trying to give away stuff and all that funness. But yeah, no, Ivan, it's been a blast hanging out with you tonight.
Yeah, it was fun.
Just talking about what I love, which is D&D. So if you
Yeah, my
couldn't tell,
coworker's like, I know it's kind of last minute, but you want to talk D&D with a stranger on Wednesday? I was like, yeah.
who doesn't want to talk to a stranger on D&D? It's hilarious. It's actually one of the pet peeves of my wife is she's like, you know, you're decently social with everybody, but if you hear somebody loves D&D, you go to a different level. And I was like, yeah, so you can, and she doesn't go to any of the cons with me or anything like that. I do all that with companies that bring
Hmm.
me along and such. I was like, if you think it's bad here, like, throw me in a world where everybody is the same way and see how life works. But that's how I
Oh, yeah.
met. That's how I meet people like Kevin, and that's how we saw you guys at Gen Con, and whatnot. And because I
I
remembered
I
when
love
I
I love
looked,
working at
what was
conventions.
that?
I love working at conventions. It's great.
Yeah, I know conventions are fun. Like I did, I think this last Gen Con, I think I played because I was working with GUI Cube, which is the company I'm writing for right now. I think I ran 16 games that weekend. It was just constant. I didn't get out. Actually, we didn't even get out of our game room until midday on Saturday. Was the first time I had even been able to get into the big convention hall to even do anything, because I was just running games and telling people and meeting people. And then Sunday I went out and I did all my networking for Tabletop Misfits and met some really cool people. So it was I'm looking forward to this year. We're bringing a bigger experience to Gen Con. I'm excited.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so if you guys are looking for new dice trays and you want your own custom dice tray, they are doing a big promotion right now to for their custom dice trays, which is trying to pull up so I can give you the exact link. And we'll I misplaced it. Where's it at? Go back to the website. It was literally like the first thing on your page. There you go. I was looking at the wrong page. Yeah. So if you guys are trying to put your own pictures on there, or your own streams, or your own group, you can get all those different size dice trays right there with, or you can do it you can have your own, which is
Well,
pretty cool. And if you have a special puppy or kitty that you want to add to your D&D world, you can throw that on there
yes,
too. So
I do have one of my dog sitting at work.
that's pretty
Um,
cool. Like I personally wouldn't do it because like I'm very into like the style that I run with my D&D and stuff, but for a lot of people like that's a really cool experience. So
well, it's
like I
funny.
said,
So we were experimenting and used a picture of my dog, and it's just like, well, no, I just want to see my dog all day, so I left it at work.
this isn't the way I wanted this to work.
Yeah, let me send you a picture of a custom one that we did for someone recently.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot of fun. Um,
Oh, hold on, I knew I did something. I did this and I forgot that I did it. So let me spin that over. So yeah, so that's just a picture of our dice tray. I thought I'd show you guys off a little a bigger image of that. So
oh, I don't know if I send you an image, can you pop it up on screen?
yeah, I can put it up on stream.
Okay, it's taking a
Might
while
take
to.
a might take a little bit, a couple seconds, but let me save that.
So,
Keep
a little
talking and
backstory
I'll
about
get this stuff.
this guy. There was a penguin in Japan called Grape Coon. Grape because the armband on his arm was purple. And for a promotion for an anime, they had like a cardboard cutout of this penguin girl in the penguin exhibit, and he fell in love with the the cardboard cutout of this anime girl, and it became
Oh,
such a big thing in Japan. And then eventually, when the penguin passed away, there they they did another one that was him and her in a cardboard cutout, and there's just so much fan art of him. And
oh yeah.
somebody sent us a fan art to do a custom tray for, and it was
Wow.
great. So I had to take a picture.
So I don't. So for some reason, when I imported it, it flipped it, but it's okay because it's still going to show off this thing. That is crazy cool, though. Um, that's really neat. So the custom penguin, like I say, it's got the little purple armband on it,
Yep.
and that's really nifty. I do
Yeah,
want to
we've
know.
gotten ones of like people and their kids and just
Yeah,
all sorts like their character in D&D and stuff like
yeah.
that.
I mean, that's kind of what we did. All
Yeah.
of our characters for D&D and stuff like that. But the fact they said the quality of it is just incredible. That it all works together. Um, I was curious. I might have to try it, but curious if I can put LEDs in it.
Oh my gosh. From the very beginning, years ago, very first tray, people like, can you put LEDs in it? And we actually had a guy who was working with us to put LEDs in our octagon trays, but then
Nice.
COVID hit and
Yeah.
we haven't heard from him.
Well,
So,
when I've got a good friend of mine who has a knack for coming up with ridiculous ways of doing things. So if I can get blue LEDs in these, I will definitely be sending you a picture of that because that is going to look
yeah, please do.
pretty epic.
Yeah, one of my coworkers right now is working on getting LEDs in the display tray.
Yeah.
Little sneak peek for something again.
Yeah, more projects, right? So,
Oh, for sure. We always have way too many.
yeah, no. If you don't if you lose that drive, it's no longer fun. You can't just get, stagnant and not be able to do that. So,
Yeah, it's great. It's a very creative environment there. Like I came in just as like, hey, we need someone to just sit there with a drill all day and just screw things together. But like I've had some creative projects and it's been a lot of fun. Everyone's really creative and encouraging, and
well,
it's
that's good because, like I said, those are where the true artistics come from. Because you can be like, hey, yes, I sit here and I put these things together all day, but I've got this magnificent, wonderful, ridiculous idea. What do you guys think? And if it
mhm.
for smaller groups or smaller organizations like this, it's great because then you can then throw the idea out and as a group kind of go, yeah, maybe that would work and that would look really nice and um, because like I said, you guys use specific types of wood, and then
Mhm.
your master, the big crate like above and beyond, I would say dice tray that I've ever seen. The mayor is
Yes,
just insanely beautiful.
yes, the one we did the Kickstarter for. That one
Yes.
we did not laser cut. That one was all done. So recently we actually doubled the size of our shop. We got the area above us, so we have a whole second floor now, and we put a bunch of woodworking stuff up there, and we hired a guy who's good with woodworking tools, and he came up with that design, and yeah, it's gorgeous. I
Yeah. No. It's
wish I brought one
yeah.
of those home actually.
Sorry, I'm pulling it up. I gotta show this thing off. This is what blew my. I saw this first before even anything else. And these things are crazy. All wood,
hmm
all natural leather. Like it's so nice.
it's vegan leather.
Yeah,
Can't
vegan
say
leather.
can't say natural
Not
leather.
natural leather, all vegan leather. Got it. Vegan leather. I really personally like we'll do this off stream. I don't understand what vegan leather is. Unless it's a really easy explanation, then I don't I we can do that
It's
off
just a
stream. But
just a soft plastic basically.
yeah. Oh,
It feels kind of leathery,
it
but
does.
it's
That's why I was like when you said vegan leather, I was like,
yeah,
it
that's the stuff
feels
that's
like
on
leather.
that's the stuff that's on your tray.
Yeah, no, it's really nice.
hmm
The fact that you use that for all the trays and like that looks really nice. That's
It's some of them. So like this one right here is vegan leather, but you can also get it printed directly on the wood. Some people like that. Personally, I like the softer noise. Some people like the rattlier
yeah,
wood noise.
I like the softer noise.
Yeah,
So that's
and
kind
I
of
mean like
my theory.
the dice towers are basically there just to make they're there just to make noise. I mean that's
Yeah.
and then all the time we get people emailing us like, oh, can you make it a lot quieter? Why do you have it? Like it's
Did you so I was told though that originally dice towers were created not to make noise but to make it so that it was a better roll. And I was like, I don't really know if that's the case. Like I get maybe there's a little more, because it's rolling in different angles and kind of knocking around to do
I
it.
mean, if
But
you're worried about someone cheating, you can make them use a dice tower
yeah,
because I I don't see any way they can really. If it's a good enough dice tower, I don't see any way they can really cheat with that.
Yeah, I don't either. Unless they've got some sort of hidden compartment that they can pull a new dice out, like,
Well, then you get a clear one like this one, and
right, like that one, and you can't do nothing, bud.
but man, there's some people who are like they are expert at dice. Like you ever see those people where they have a die under a cup and like they spin around to like any side they want,
Yeah,
and then they'll do it with like 5 dice and they'll stack them up with like any orientation.
yeah. I don't
It's
understand how it works. Sometimes I just think it's mirrors. I'm like, there's no way this is a possibility. But yeah, no,
and watch, we've both been
it's
duped, and it's just like it's just a magic trick. It's not. I can actually do that.
but yeah, no, like I said, I can't do any of that. But everybody, it has been a blast. Check out C4 Labs. As I said before, if you want your custom dice tray, this is the month to go get those things. Let them know the Tabletop Misfits sent you, just so they know that we are letting them know all that fun stuff. And I guess tonight, last call, because there's no more alcohol in my cup. So
Mine's empty too.
there we go. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. And as of right now, the tavern is closed.